Awesome. Well, James, thanks for coming to answer some questions and talk a little bit about appraising. So, why don't you introduce yourself and your company? And
So I'm James McKell. I'm an independent appraiser. I have been since I started in 2018.
Okay.
That's when I started my training and stuff. I got licensed in 2020 or 2019.
Okay.
So it took about a year of training, and then I got licensed, and then after that I got certified. When was it? 21. So about a year later I was certified.
Right when everything was just busy.
Yeah.
That's when you came in. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been good. Well, it was good for about 3 years, and then the last year has been kind of interesting.
Awesome.
So
that's cool. And then where have you been kind of all over the state then where you're doing it, or where at Maine?
Yeah, so when I first started, I was just mostly Utah County.
Okay.
Juab a little bit, which is just south of us, and then like Heber, Wasatch area,
cool.
up the canyon. And then when it was really busy, I was only Utah County, kind of closed myself off, which was awesome. Yeah. Now I'm all over the place. I go up to Davis, about an hour north.
Okay.
Tooele, also about an hour north. I even go down.
That's a lot of driving.
Yeah, I go an hour south, so which is kind of nice with appraising. Like I was able to, when things slow down, I was able to open myself up to more areas. So I drive more, but I get enough work now to get by. I'm just doing more driving.
That's good. Probably get some good podcasts under and all that.
Yeah, audiobooks, podcasts.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, one of the big things I wanted to talk to you about today too are, I get questions a lot as a lender from my clients or even just family and friends about, things that add value to a home. And I think a lot of them are kind of those, rumors, old wives' tales, but some of it could be legitimate. So I thought we could kind of bounce some of these off, and you can tell me things that people ask you all the time. But one of those things I get asked a lot about is like wood flooring. Does that really make a difference, like from an appraising standpoint in a house?
Wood flooring, if it's just like your normal cookie cutter home that they're building today where they put laminate and everything, if there's a home that all they do is add wood flooring to it, it's not going to add any value.
Okay.
But if it's like a nice couple $1 million home or $1 million home, and there's one that has, for some reason, laminate flooring and one that, like, the subject has wood, I will take that into account and give that more value. I wouldn't say on the appraisal report, like, this has more value because of wood flooring. But it's just one of those things that, like, goes into the quality of the home, like... So those normal, like, those cookie cutter homes, if one has wood flooring and granite countertops and shutter blinds and these more expensive features, I'm going to boost its quality up in the appraisal and give more value to that quality. But if it was just all they have is wood flooring and stuff, it's not going to give any
And same
value.
with that, because you mentioned like the countertops. Is there, like, does granite versus quartz countertops really make a difference, or is it just stone? Does that even matter? Like,
No, not really. Granite versus quartz, I've never made a difference unless, again, if it's just overall quality of the home. Like this home has 3-inch granite countertops
that makes sense.
and wood flooring and tile showers, then it's going to boost it up to like another level of quality. And then so I'll give... Sense. So just a quick example. So like on the appraisal report, we do like a comparable sales grid, which you probably see all the time. Or if you've gotten an appraisal... We make adjustments for quality and condition, and we kind of rank them. So the quality rankings and condition are 1 through 6.
Right.
So like your normal home is usually like a 3 quality and condition. But if it's got wood floor, granite countertops, tile, showers and stuff, that might make it a quality 2. And then you find other homes that are quality 2. And then if other homes are not, you boost their value.
Adjust depending on the quality.
So that makes sense.
So yes, it does add value, but it also depends where it doesn't always necessarily make a big difference. Especially if probably all of the comparable homes have the same features, it's probably not going to make as big of a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
But so if someone's doing like a remodel and they're like, oh, I'm going to go find, or I have a home I'm getting ready to sell, would it really make a huge, let's say just regular single family home in a residential neighborhood, maybe not something big custom $1 million home, right? But if they're like, I'm going to update my house before I put it on the market, do you think it would really make a huge difference to swap out all the flooring, to swap out the countertops? Like, would that make a huge value difference, or probably, I don't know.
It would make a value difference.
Yeah.
I don't know if the return on the investment would...
That makes sense too, because it is pricier to...
Yeah. So like for an appraisal, usually a home, like if it's just a normal, like your $500,000 cookie cutter home.
Right, yeah.
For quality adjustments, if it's a better quality, we usually give maybe $50,000. But then there's some people who put in $75,000 into their remodel.
Yeah.
And so they're not getting that value. So like the big things that we look for in every appraisal are the square footage of the home. Yeah. So that you can't really, I mean, you could add on to the home.
Or finish a basement.
Yeah, finish square footage.
Square footage, okay.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. And then we look at like the lot size.
Okay.
So that you can't really do anything about. We look at the age, which you can't really do anything about.
Right, yeah.
And then just like the location. And the way we look at the location is we look for, in every appraisal, we compare like the subject property to other homes. And then we kind of rank them and say this home is worth this much based off these sales in the area. So for location, we just find homes that are in a similar location.
Okay.
So those are the 4 things, and you can't really change much about those.
Do anything. Okay.
So the other stuff, it could maybe change your appraisal $20,000 to $50,000, but if it's not square footage, age, location, it's not gonna make a big difference.
And then you guys treat basement square footage different than above ground square footage, right?
Yeah.
And why is that, and how do you guys do that?
That is a good question. So, most new homes, they don't finish the basement.
Right. Yeah.
And it doesn't cost as much. I mean, I think you know this from finishing basements.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy sometimes to just go slap up some drywall and put in some carpet and stuff. The cost, I guess, is just less, and people aren't looking for it as much.
Okay.
You know, and I see it all the time when I'm doing like new homes.
Yeah.
The homes that have a finished basement compared to those that don't, there's not a huge difference in value.
Gotcha.
Which is just so it just reflects the market, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense. So so that's kind of one thing to keep in mind for people, I guess, is because I've had clients dispute appraisals here and there, and one of those things, I had somebody one time that was really disputing the value given on the basement, and I remember I had that conversation where I was like, well, it's valued lower because it's below grade.
Yeah.
But I really didn't know the right way to explain that. I was like, I don't know how else to say it. It's just that's what they do for basements. But I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tricky question, but you're not gonna get as much value as you want out of it probably, just because it's easier to finish. It's already half finished.
Right. It is. So it's framing up for the most part. You got stuff stubbed in. So yeah, that makes sense. What other interesting questions do you get from people, or you hear asking about appraisals?
I just looked at a home this week, and they gave me like a 2-page list of just all the updates they've done. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so that's tough sometimes because like I can't give everything value, which we've talked about, those big things. When I get asked a lot is if we just are trying to hit the contract price every time.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's a good question, because
I can kind of explain our thinking on that. So value of a home, a home is worth what people are willing to pay for it. Right. Yeah. So we should be coming close to the contract price if this was a contract between 2 independent parties who maybe negotiated value a little bit, and they came together and they chose a value. Hopefully our appraisal can reflect that. Right, yeah. And so that's usually what we're doing. We're just reflecting the market and see if they have a good contract price or not. So usually we do hit the value. And if I'm ever coming in lower, if it's like $10,000 low, I'm gonna hit the value. I'm not gonna. If I was coming in like $5,000 or $10,000 low on a lot of appraisals, I'd probably lose clients. Right. And stuff. No, that makes sense, and that is kind of interesting because you here and there you see that, but also, I mean, where you work in multiple counties, things are going to be valued different in different areas too, right? Yeah. Because like Salt Lake County, very different than Utah County, and Juab, as well. So that's going to be where, because I've had real estate agents up in Salt Lake County working with clients down here, and they're like, wow, this house should be, they're selling a house, I think it should be worth significantly more. Yeah. And a lot of that, they got to realize, like you said, it comes down to what the market in that area is doing. Yeah. But how far do you guys even go out to do an appraisal? Like a mile? For comps? Yeah, we usually try to keep it within a mile. Usually I have some that are maybe 2 miles away. Okay. It just depends on the subject property. Like if it's unique, if it's on an acre or 5 acres. Or if it's like multiple houses on one tax ID or, something goofy. Yeah. Yeah, then I'm going to be... It's tougher to find them, Yeah, so like... Sandpit especially, like I'll maybe go 10 miles to find comps sometimes.
Sense, yeah.
But if it's like Orem, just cookie cutter home in Orem, I can keep everything within even a half mile sometimes.
Have you noticed as the market slowed down a little bit, like are you having a tougher time with comps, or is it still, I don't know, because you probably have to go back further on how recently sold, which,
there's just less choices, less comps out there. Back in 2022, we could choose from any comps.
That was crazy.
Just choose your 5 highest comps and throw them in, but now it's maybe you only have 5 comps to choose from. So.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, what other interesting questions you get from people? That's pretty funny, but some of those.
I just on this topic, this wasn't a question, but different things that people try to dispute value. One time I had one that I was just like a condo in Springville.
Okay. And
they tried to give me comps that were built by the same builder, but it was like Orem, Provo, Vineyard.
Yeah.
And so things like that, location. That's like the 3 L's of real estate or whatever they say. Location makes a big difference on value.
That makes something I see a lot too, because we'll often, on my end, when there's an appraisal dispute, it often comes to us before we take it back to you guys, right? And I often have a lot of sellers that will send me pending sales. And I think that's a good thing for people to keep in mind, is that a pending sale doesn't really reflect the actual market value of anything, because it's never actually been sold, right? Nobody's bought it at that price. And so that's where I usually have to go back and I have to say, look, we have to have sold comparables for it to be a comparable, because these houses could be listed for whatever, right? They're not sold.
Yeah, you have no idea what the contract price is or what.
So, the other thing I was going to ask you is about something I ran into for the first time a couple of years ago was view. Because I had never heard of that before, but then I saw an appraisal come in and it said that they were giving value for the view. So how does that work?
Yeah, sometimes we give quite a bit of value for views.
It's like a house up on the hills has a nice view, and you can actually add value to a house for that.
It's funny here in Utah, like one of the view adjustments we can make is like mountain views, but like every home has a mountain view.
Right. Yeah,
so
that's true. You look every direction, you see a mountain.
So it just depends on the home. If it's a home on the mountain that has a beautiful view of the value, we're gonna give value to that view, and then we're gonna look for comparable homes that have similar views. And that's kind of how we come up with the value.
It's a fascinating, field that you're in. Like it's a totally different side to what I see all the time, but it's super necessary to really keep the market in control and what's happening, so awesome. Well, I don't know, do you have any other, I was going to ask you, I wanted to ask you too, what would you say is like the worst home you've ever inspected? Because I feel like I've heard some pretty funny stories.
That's a good question. I've seen, you have hoarders. And people doesn't even look like they can use their bathroom in their home. Sometimes you get that. And you can smell the urine and feces, whatever. That's probably the worst, is just when you walk into the home and immediately you smell. And it's always funny. People will always say when you walk into a home like that, like, oh, sorry, we're just organizing, or and I just like every single time I walk in like, oh, sorry, we're just like trying to clean up, and it's like, really, like it looks like this stuff has been here for a couple of years.
Call the dump truck.
But we see a lot of cool homes too.
I don't know, anything else that you wanted to share?
I get asked about solar a lot.
Oh, I bet.
I don't know if I really want to go into solar, honestly, because it's such a...
I'm curious, because what does that do for the value side of the house?
So it's, I thought a lot about it. When I was being trained and stuff, my dad trained me, and he's 56 or something like that now. And so I feel like there's a lot of appraisers that are older. It's kind of older field, and most of them, especially my dad, was like, no, I never give value to solar. There's no value there. And I think that comes from 20 years ago. Solar wasn't a thing really, and if it was a thing, it was just ugly. Nobody wanted it on their house. So for a while I just never gave value to solar until I started getting asked more about it and why I wasn't giving value. And so now I've looked into it more. One thing, we're told not to give any value to solar if it's financed.
That makes sense.
If people don't loan it. So if it's leased, I always, if I see solar, I ask if it's financed, and 75% of the time it is, which is nice. But if it's not, then there's different ways that we can come up with that value. Kind of difficult sometimes. You have to figure out how much it's saving them, or just how we do every appraisal, compare it to other homes that have solar. But what's tough is everybody thinks it's going to give their home a lot of value. But a lot of times I look at comparables with solar on them, and they're actually selling less than homes with solar.
Interesting. Well, I noticed on my end, because people come to me, they want to buy a house with solar, they've often got to assume that debt. And so it is kind of a liability for a lot of people. Because they've got to make sure they can basically afford the house and now solar panels on top of that. So that's interesting how they often come in lower, and it kind of complicates things sometimes, because it'll say on like the MLS listing, it'll say, the new buyer has to qualify for this, this other financing basically, and so. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so that's kind of a myth. Everybody thinks if they get solar, their home value is going to go up.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I see that it doesn't go up. I mean, and some people look for it. Some people don't really want solar on their roof.
That's interesting, because if you think about, because I know somebody that put solar on right before they sold their house too. They pretty much went and got $30,000 in debt.
Wow.
And then they threw their house on the market. And so I don't really remember the outcome of it all, but I remember at the time thinking, that's crazy, just to go get debt to then sell your house. But I guess there are people that are, probably more attracted to it than others.
And usually when we give value to solar, it maybe helps 10 to 15 grand.
Yeah, interesting.
So,
cool.
Similar thing with like pools.
Oh, yeah.
You have to, and with appraising, we're just trying to reflect the market.
Yeah.
And so that's why we use comparables so much, because it's a reflection of the market. And so if a home has a pool, then we got to find homes similar to that one with a pool.
With a pool, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they have sold for less. It kind of depends on the size of the home too. Like if it's a big $1 million home, the pools are going to help, because pools are a lot of the maintenance and upkeep and stuff. And so those guys.
Well, in Utah, in your typical residential neighborhoods, pools are few and far between. Like it's not.
So and we got winter for half the year.
That's kind of tough to find, I would think, for a lot of them, unless they're kind of up probably in the nicer neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So there's things, people are always asking questions like that. So here's a question for you.
Oh, yeah.
If I can.
Yeah, for sure.
Do lenders, because you're a lender, do they always want the appraisal to come in high? Or has there ever been times where you wanted the appraisal to come in low?
That's a good question. So it's always kind of funny. Like if it's my client buying a home and the appraisal comes in low, often I'm kind of rooting for it. I'm kind of like, hey, that's good. But it depends often on how the sellers are, because sometimes I've had great times where, it's worked out and the seller's like, fine, this is what it is. We're going to lower the price or whatever. But when the market was busy, it was really bad when it came in low, because everybody was already paying above asking price anyway. And so the sellers would pretty much always just say, well, we're going to back out. Somebody else is going to buy it. The other tricky time when it comes in low is FHA loans. Because on an FHA loan, your appraisal is basically married to that house for like 6 months. And so if I'm selling a house and a buyer comes in FHA to purchase it and they get a low FHA appraisal, then anybody that wants to buy the house FHA will always get that lower value than what I was hoping for the house. So that is where I've run into some issues as well, is where it's been an FHA appraisal that's come in low. And the sellers have been furious, because they feel like it takes away their ability to sell the home or different things like that. But for the most part, like honestly, I've had some really good, some clients I would say it worked out really well where they got a lower appraisal, and for them it was a good thing. Yeah. But I say the person that's usually the most upset about it is the seller.
Yeah. There's been times where I've come in low and I'm thinking like, it's a purchase, and so we're. Really, the appraisers are there for the bank, for the lender, not the buyer. But I think like, okay, at least maybe I'm helping out the buyer here, because then they'll be able to go to the seller and say, look, appraisal came in low, let's negotiate a new price.
Yeah. Sometimes that works out great. Other times, the sellers are pretty everybody thinks there's gold in their attic. And I'm sure you've never seen that when you've inspected an attic, but everybody thinks their house is worth more than it is. And so anytime it's slightly off, I mean, something happens.
Yeah, kind of a funny thing. Like sometimes we see homes that aren't on the market being sold. They're selling to a friend or something. And they'll always tell us when we're looking, like the sellers will always be like, oh man, we're giving them such a good deal on this home. And then we do the appraisal and it's like, maybe you're saving them $5,000.
Right. Yeah. That's great. Well, I appreciate you coming in, taking some time to talk about all this. I think it's fun. I think people are going to like to hear I don't know, about this side of the industry they don't see as often. So
yeah, hopefully it helps a little bit answer some questions.
Yeah, hopefully we can get some more people out there buying houses and needing some appraisals.
Yeah, for real.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
Okay, thank you.